Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are currently gearing up for a moon landing. So I was looking at our contracts available here. Science data from space around Kerbin, super easy, we'll grab that. Plant a flag on the moon, we'll absolutely grab that too. Anything else here that we really want to do? I don't see anything, but overall this is definitely waggling its eyes suggestively that we need to land on the moon. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, I think we need to upgrade our R&D. Let's go ahead and do that. That is, of course, pretty expensive, but we've got the cash. And that means that we have 66.7 science, so we can't actually go for, like, heavier rocketry. Unfortunately, having access to the mainsail would be great. We currently have access to the skipper. Mainsail would be amazing, and we would need, in advanced fuel systems... Yeah, that's the Jumbo 64 there. This gives us access to the 32. So that's fine. We're going to have to think about how we want to get there with this technology level. So let's go ahead and go into the VAB here. And let's create ourselves a new craft. This is going to be a completely new craft. And we're going to be doing a pomegranate reentry module for its 3 crew capacity. Excellent. We absolutely do want an experiment storage unit on this. There we go. That, of course, gives us a mounting point for our parachute. Ooh, that's a big parachute. That gives us our mounting point for our parachute, and we're also going to go for our pair of drogue chutes, as we often do. Excellent. We're going to need some science equipment on this, and we're going to go for a Science Junior, as well as a payload bay. Or rather, a service bay here. Now, one thing we could potentially think about bringing is experiments to stay on the surface, cargo experiments. Now, we do have an experiment control station and photovoltaic panels, but we don't really have anything else available right now. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we put in like a cargo storage unit here, and inside of that cargo storage unit, it only has 3 slots. Maybe we drop a control station and 2 photovoltaic panels for the ultimate purpose of storing, or rather for the ultimate purpose of getting science there later. That's something we could definitely do. Okay, so with that on there, that's great. This is essentially what we're going to be returning. So we're going to need a heat shield here. We're going to do a 1.25 meter heat shield. Excellent. And then we're going to do a TD12 decoupler. And that is our return capsule. Wonderful. Now, what are we going to call this? That's something I need to think about. We are going to call this the Pratihara Lander Mark 1. Okay, there we go. That's good. So with that in place, we are then, of course, going to put in a fancy Terrier engine. And that's going to be our lander. Now, of course, this has no fuel. That is something we will need to consider. Of course, we're going to need to put things in the service bay as well, and inside of the service bay, I do want to put in a KER. We do not need that to be on symmetry. There we go. KER there. We'll put in a mystery goo containment unit. Like that. We'll put in, say, a 2-hot thermometer, as well as a press mat barometer. There we go. Any other science experiments that we have in here? Not yet. Not yet. We're not going to need a communitron, I don't think. We should be fine on that front. I am, however, going to put in a couple of Z100s. I'm going to do this quad-coupled, I think. And I'd like to rotate these to be something along the lines of that. That should do. Plenty of power if we need it. We probably won't, but that's fine. We're also going to put on some quad-coupled photovoltaic panels, and I'd like to place them right there so that hopefully it's not as awkward when the Science Junior opens. Yeah, that looks fine. Excellent. So this is, of course, our lander module. and we'll save that. However, this is not what is actually going to land. This is what is going to return. So we need to put on some couplers. I'm going to do a very similar one to my normal lander, and we're going to put on some quad couplers right there. And what we're going to bring is going to be T400s. Like so. Excellent. We'll just strut those in. I think we probably only need a single strut to make this work. Actually, probably don't even need a single strut. But I'm going to put in a single strut just to make sure that we don't have any warping or bending there. We're also going to have a decoupler up top, because for the ascent, I want to have aerodynamic nose cones here. But I don't want to carry these the whole way. So that'll be fine. We're also going to, of course, run this fuel in from here to the engine. Like so. And in theory, if we have this in its own stage, we should see, yep, fuel there. So if we hop over to the moon and look at this, we can see that our thrust weight on the moon is perfectly fine. That's wonderful. So this is, of course, what we are going to be landing with, but we need landing legs on this, don't we? That would probably be helpful. We're going to go with LT1 landing struts, and we're just going to put these in somewhere like here. Okay, so that's our overall lander model. I'm going to move these up ever so slightly. I don't want to be snapping this. Just ever so slightly. There we go. Is that good? Yes, that looks good. Okay. So there's our landing module. Let's go ahead and save this and launch it. Of course, we're not going to have the thrust to weight, but I just want to check to see how this actually ends up working here. There's actually nothing to check, but regardless, we'll see. We don't have a surface sample here? Okay. Well, you can see here, we don't have the thrust to weight to lift off on Kerbin. Right. That would be a problem. That would be a problem. That is something that we may want to address. I'm not actually sure we have the tech to address it. But yeah, we don't have the thrust to weight to lift off on Kerbin. Our current Kerbin thrust to weight is 0.11. Okay, we're going to revert that, and the question then becomes, how do we deal with this? Because the problem here is the globular shape of the reentry module. We actually do have the bigger radial decouplers, and so I'm going to pop those off, and we're going to use the further standoff decouplers, and we will position those roughly. That's awful. These are much larger. There's also the hydraulic detachment manifold. These are also much larger than the radial decouplers. I want a little bit more space here. And that's for small separation events, yeah. One thing we could do, I suppose, is put a radial decoupler here like we had previously. So those would go on basically there. And then we could just put in a strut here, a modular girder segment, like this, to get us space. That would definitely be a much wider lander, which isn't necessarily the worst thing. And then we'd want to duct that fuel in like this in theory. Of course, we would need to move that out of there. Okay. Something along the lines of that. I mean, that would do the trick. It's real dumb looking. There's no doubt about that. You know what? I'm actually okay with this. These will blow up on the pomegranate reentry module, but these will be destroyed and the reentry module will not. I'm okay with that. It's a small explosion, but I think it's fine. So, we'll go ahead and retract these landing struts, and we are, of course, going to need a decoupler here. There we go. And we're going to now need a maneuvering stage. We'll use a T-800, and we'll use a Terrier liquid fuel engine for that as well. That is, I think, our most efficient engine in vacuum. I think. As far as vacuum optimized engines go right now. And then beyond that, do we want to scale this up and get into like Rockomax engines to lift this? Or do we want to quadcouple a lifter again? That's the question. For now, let's go ahead and put in a TD12. I'm not too concerned about this thrust to weight, although I do kind of want to check to see what the stage 6 is over the moon in terms of delta V. It is... let's see, stage 3 is 3,000, and stage 6 is only 800 DV. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, that's only about 800 DV, but that should be sufficient to get us there. Especially if our first stage is a little bit overpowered. So let's take a look at our fuel here. We do have a fuel tank adapter. Do we have a Rockomax brand adapter in terms of fuel tanks? I'm not sure that we do. So a Rockomax tank, of course, would be something along the lines of this 32. And you can see here, it changes size. This does not go to Rockomax. Rockomax often has just a structural adapter. Yeah, we have a Rockomax brand adapter. That does not, however, carry any fuel, which isn't necessarily ideal. But for now, we'll just have, say, essentially the equivalent of a Jumbo 64. And then let's put in a skipper here, which I believe we have access to. Yeah, we have access to the skipper. Unfortunately, we do not have access to a mainsail yet, but I want to check to see our thrust to weight here. That's 1.0. Okay. That's a lot of DV, though, there. That's nice. With that being 1.0, we could potentially do, like, a heavy lift radial decoupler here. And put on something along the lines of just SRBs. Just whatever the biggest SRBs are that we have. Let's see, the actual thrust here is 1155. So yeah, I think the Pollux is the largest that we have. And it does gimbal, too. So something kind of along the lines of this. Actually, I feel like that's kind of hilariously overpowered. We are over mass as well. So that's something we should consider. Yeah, this is pretty overpowered. So we're going to drop these, and we're going to maybe use the kickbacks instead. What does that do to our mass? They're pretty big, or pretty tall, rather, compared to the rest of our rocket. I mean, that does make our thrust to weight reasonable, and we're not over mass like this. We would need aerodynamic nose cones on here, most likely, or want them anyway. We could do this. And then we'd want to probably move these down to around here for the Korolev cross. And then move this up as much as we possibly can. Although we would need to make it be a little bit higher on this tank. One thing we could do is increase the length of this tank down to somewhere around here-ish. I feel like that's probably... like, this whole thing, I feel like, is pretty overkill. 0.47, and then 1.44. I'm just a little bit concerned right now that this is underwhelming in power. And it may well be. One thing we could do is, instead of solid boosters, we could do liquid boosters. Let's see what that would end up looking like, shall we? That would save us a fair amount on weight, for sure. It's not like weight is a tremendous issue for us right now, though. So we'd put something like that there, and then, say, a pair of T-800s mounted to that. And then we would ditch this tank, because I really think that that's too much. And then we would have, maybe just get this down a little bit lower, say a T-200 here. Like that, or maybe even we could get away with a T-400. Yeah, I think we could get away with that. And then we could have either Reliance or Swivels. I would prefer Reliance here, because, of course, the skipper does gimbal. So it would be something along the lines of this. What would this look like in thrust to weight? 1.2. That's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. Okay, so this could probably work. Let's go ahead and put an aerodynamic nose cone on there. And of course, we're going to need to strut this up a little bit. So we will strut this in from here to here, just to be above this little potential structural weak point. And we'll strut it in at the bottom as well. So there to there. And of course, we would need to fuel this up. The question is, if we have fuel flow like this, that does reduce our thrust to weight here, but it's 1.0. And by the time we get up there, our thrust to weight ratio will be higher because we'll be in thinner atmosphere. It'll be slightly more efficient. Okay, this should work. Let's look at our aerodynamics, which are probably awkward. And I'm also going to color this orange. Perfect. And then these out here I'm going to make pure white. And this here as well. Much better. And we'll make that orange as well. Perfect. Can we make these white too? Yes, we can. Okay, so it'll be something like that. Let's look at our center of mass. Obviously, it's pretty low, and our center of aerodynamics is there. So we're going to need some aerodynamics. There's no doubt about that. And let's go with something along the lines of, we could go with Delta Deluxe winglets instead of the tail fin that we've been running recently. I'm interested in checking the relative wing area, 0.61 and 0.65. So Delta Deluxe winglets actually do have slightly more control surface area. Or wing area, actually. But the control surface portion of the tail fin is 100% compared to 20% here. And it's the same max deflection and actuator speed. So let's just go ahead and run tail fins for now. And we could run it somewhere like this, and this should be reasonable aerodynamically. Let's run a simulation of this. Aerodynamic simulation of our moon rocket. We're also testing the power of our first stage. I'm slightly concerned that the first stage is a little bit underpowered. We'll see. And yeah, we don't have the surface sample. We'll grab that in a bit. Or when I remember. More likely. Okay, this may well work as a moon rocket. Liftoff is pretty good. We are tearing through this side fuel. I'm not super shocked by this. But we've only got about a minute of burn in that. Okay. Of course, our DV is just going up right now. That's to be expected as we make our way up through the atmosphere. We're moving at about 100 meters per second now. It's maybe a little slow off the pad. Let's see how the aerodynamics feel. Take it on over. It's a little bit wobbly. There's no doubt about that. It's manageable, though. Let's see how it is once our side tanks come off. Good separation. I like it. It's much more maneuverable with the side tanks off. This is not surprising. And the real question is, what's our speed going to end up looking like? We're not going very quickly right now. We are increasing our time to apoapsis, and our thrust to weight is 1.21. We do have about 2 more minutes of burn here. I'm thinking our first stage is looking good. Look at this DV. Insane. I'm thinking our first stage is looking good, though. I went over a little more aggressively than I usually would because I was testing aerodynamic profiles, so this is not representative of what our actual apoapsis height would be, but this is still looking pretty decent. We want to get a little higher up before we go further, but overall, I'm reasonably happy with this. Our thrust to weight is, of course, continually increasing. The question is, do we get into orbit with this stage? That is a good question. Once again, I'm just holding this attitude. I'm mostly just checking to see if our first stage is underpowered or not. I feel like it is a little bit underpowered, but manageably so. And of course, I didn't check all of this staging. That's something that we'll handle later on. But I'm feeling pretty good about this. I would feel better if this was a mainsail. I think a mainsail over a skipper would absolutely be an improvement. If we did that, we may want to get SRBs as the side tanks rather than liquid. But for now, things are looking reasonably okay. And of course, we want to ditch this reasonably soon. Our aerodynamic nose cones there. Ditch that weight. They will blow up, and we are expecting this. So it looks like we just barely make it. There we go. 80 kilometers, and we've still got some DV left here. Now, of course, this was a little bit awkward of an ascent profile, and this is not an ascent profile that I would take in a real flight, but this is an aerodynamic test. Okay, let's make our way on over. We don't really have much in terms of control, in terms of pitch here, but that's not surprising. Or technically, this is yaw that we're doing right now. I didn't put an ASAS on this, but I also don't believe that we need an ASAS. So let's just make our way on over. This is apparently 1 minute and 12 seconds. I doubt we're going to have the correct timing on this, but I just want to see how much extra DV we actually need out of this tank and how much we have left over. Okay. Let's go ahead and make this burn. Yeah, we're definitely burning late here. Again, it's because of the ascent profile. Okay, that was expected. And off we go. So we're going to have to burn basically this entire stage with this ascent profile, and that's what I was concerned about. So we're going to go ahead and revert this. I got the information that I needed. Aerodynamically, we're going pretty well. However, our main issue is that we're just a little bit underpowered on this stage. This doesn't surprise me. This doesn't surprise me at all. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to put out a Mark 1 command pod, and we're going to launch this, and we're going to go grab that surface sample. It's not like it's going to be worth much science, but I want to grab it. And we've got ourselves some good amounts of information on our Pratihara lander. So that is great. We will go ahead and EVA Jeb. And he'll grab his surface sample. And apparently we don't have an EVA report from the launch pad either. Okay. We'll recover that. Wonderful. And I think we can do it again and get a little bit more science from that extra surface sample. Okay, we got 9 science out of that. Was that all of it? Let's check. But I'm definitely going to need to think about increasing the power level of that first stage. Getting a mainsail in there would be a big, big deal. But I do think that we should probably switch to SRBs. Okay, let's get Jeb out there. Grab that. I think the EVA report is actually a little bit bugged. And we'll recover that. Now, as far as the actual SRB that I want to put on there, because I need to just think about that. Let's hop into the VAB and take a look at the thrust of a of a, what's the name of that? I can't remember the name of the engine. These guys. The Reliant. That's the one. Okay. So the thrust of a Reliant is 205 kilonewtons at sea level, and it's at sea level that we care about here. The thrust of one of these SRBs is far higher. Even a Thumper is better. And the Thumper is approximately correctly sized. A Pollux is a little on the big side for what we're going for. So maybe we should go for Thumpers instead of this that we have. We'll need, of course, to change the height on these. Oh, that was not in symmetry mode. Okay, we'll need to move these on down. What is this symmetry? What is this symmetry? Why are you here? You should be here. Okay, there we go. We'll move it down to about there, and then we're going to need to also move this down to roughly there. There. Okay. Now the real question is, what does that thrust to weight look like here? 1.47. Do we want to quadcouple this? I think we do, actually. I think we want to get 4 of these in here. And we want to lower this a little bit. There we go. And then we will also put some aerodynamics on that. This will be a more powerful stage here, but it will burn out fuel from this stage. But this is a temporary thing until we get a mainsail. A mainsail will help tremendously and will probably allow us to extend this stage, which would be good. I think 2 Jumbo 64s would be about the right amount that we'd want, and then we can upgrade to a bigger SRB. But ultimately, I think this is pretty decent. 1.79 thrust to weight ratio, burning for 42 seconds here. And then we have 1.16, which will actually be higher, burning for 112 seconds. Hopefully that will mean that we just get going a little bit faster. So this decouple and this stage can be moved together, merged. We want this to happen before this stage launches, but we'll do something like that, and then that. And then this decouple is there. That's completely fine. Then we want drogue chutes, and then we want our main chute. And then whatever this rolling around thing is. Okay. We're not quite ready to launch this yet. I want to run one more first stage power test. So let's see how this goes. And then we'll be ready to head off to the moon. Okay, first stage power test. I didn't strut these. Okay, so we've discovered our first issue. Oh, they need to be strutted. They really need to be strutted. So we're not going to be able to strut them up here without it getting super duper ugly, which I'm actually going to do. It helps the stability just too much to not do it. So we'll strut it up here. These are, of course, physics-less parts. It doesn't look good, but it gets the job done. And then we're going to also strut them in at the bottom, just like that. Okay, so with that strutted, we'll give this a power test. I am expecting this to be dramatically more power through the lower atmosphere, which will, of course, make our skipper engine more efficient. We were a little slow off the pad, there's no doubt about that. Okay, let's see how this goes. Look at our thrust to weight, 1.78. Much better off the pad. Much, much better. We'll see how maneuverable we are. We're going way faster. This is a very, very good sign. Now, of course, these guys do have gimbals. Oh yeah, this is so much more powerful. Okay, we'll just hold here for now. SRBs will be falling off soon. We're actually a little overpowered right now. But let's see what that ends up looking like after the SRBs come off. Good detach from the SRBs. We're slowing down. Our thrust to weight is over 1, though. Okay, looks good. Yeah, we're a little bit overpowered on those SRBs. I think that we should probably dial those back ever so slightly. Maybe thrust limit them to around 80%. Burn them a little longer, but a little less powerful. Okay. But overall, this is looking very nice. We're on a more realistic ascent profile. You can see here our heading's a bit off, but I kind of don't care that much. Yeah, this is looking much, much better. We've still got a minute of burn here. I do think that those SRBs are slightly overpowered. It might take a little bit of time to dial in where exactly we want those to be. I'm going to try to pull our heading down a little bit here. Correct our eccentricity. It's not like this is a real flight, but... Okay. Something along the lines of that. Jeb is, of course, fighting me and trying to pull us back to prograde, which is fine. He can do that. Okay, much better. Okay, we are in space for the apoapsis. And we're moving much more quickly horizontally. Of course, that's an ascent profile change more than anything. And we've got that 202 meters per sec, or 212 meters per second back left there, almost exactly the same. So that's fine. We'll go ahead and have this be relatively circularized. There we go. And we will make our way on over to the maneuver node. This is definitely looking much better. We have not yet detached these nose cones, which is probably something that I would manually do in reality. We'll do that and get ourselves an extra DV there. Fantastic. And in fact, we'll just hold prograde for now. Okay, 2 minutes, 44 seconds. So we should already be burning. There's no doubt about that. And of course, we're off node. Okay, we'll just hold at the node here. Excellent. So we are going to have to burn a fair amount of this off, but once again, I feel like that's a change that we can make to the SRBs to save a fair amount of DV until we're higher up. So we're going to revert that back one more time, and I do want to work on this a little bit more. Let's try 80%. We'll see how that goes. It is time to put a cut in here. I might work on this a little bit off camera. Next episode, we're definitely going to the moon. This stage feels a little bit underpowered to me, though, and we may need to extend it. However, you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.